AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. The Democrat of the day is the chairman of the Minnesota DFL. Ken Martin is kind enough to join us today to talk about Election Day coming up here on Tuesday. Ken, once again, I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. It's been a while since we last talked, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I could go for a big DFL hug come Tuesday. Let's just put it that way.
I think everyone is just ready for this election to be over. It's I don't know if it's just all the anxiety about the election, but to top it off, a pandemic and economic collapse and all the other things we've been dealing with. There's just this has been a long year, and I think everyone's ready for this to be over so we can focus on all these other pieces.
And I do want to say thank you. You and I have talked a lot. We talked coronavirus, George Floyd. We've talked election. We've talked a lot this year. I appreciate every time you've joined us. I do want to actually talk, though, to begin with, something that doesn't necessarily have to do with the election coming up on Tuesday, but it was breaking stories this week. The revelation that there are a ton of third-party pro-marijuana candidates who aren't really pro-marijuana candidates, but rather Republicans in disguise, recruited by Republicans, and even there's an implication that Paul Gazelka, the Senate majority himself, might have been involved in trying to recruit candidates to run as fake third-party candidates. This is really low. I mean, it's just as beneath. I can't even describe how it's predictable for these Republicans, but at the same time, it's just so disappointing.
Yeah, well, look, we've known about this for some time, and of course there's been plenty of public stories about this over many months now. This is not breaking news per se. I think the biggest piece that broke this week, of course, is the news that the Republican Party paid Adam Weeks to run for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. And not only is that completely unethical and certainly a departure for these parties, but I will tell you that it's criminal. You cannot pay someone to run for office. That's illegal. And I would expect in the coming days, if not sooner, that you'll see a criminal investigation begin, as well as a whole host of campaign finance complaints that will be filed. What we've seen by both Senator Paul Gazelka, Republicans in this state, including Jennifer Carnahan and others, is that they know they can't win these elections fair and square on their ideas or on their merits, on their policy positions. So they have to try to find a way to essentially deceive voters and siphon off votes from DFL candidates up and down the ballot. And, it doesn't stop just here in Minnesota. We see the Republicans doing the same thing on the presidential level with recruiting candidates like Kanye West and helping him get ballot access throughout the country, all in an attempt to shave off a few votes here and there. And, a few votes here and there could end up costing us seats here in Minnesota. There's no doubt about it, which is why Paul Gazelka was so desperate that he was recruiting candidates from the Senate office building and the state capitol over the course of the last year to run as pot party candidates. And I think this is certainly a story that's not going away. There'll be plenty of complaints filed, and I look forward to having our day in court.
I want to encourage you, absolutely. We can't allow this, especially if laws were broken. We can't just shrug and say, let's bygones be bygones. If they did this and they broke the law, you're saying that you're going to encourage the DFL to continue through and push for charges, correct?
Well, absolutely. I mean, whether it comes from the DFL or others, we're highly supportive of any complaints coming forward at this point. It's the connections are so obvious. The evidence is so resounding, and frankly, at this point, it would be malfeasance for anyone not to file a complaint, both campaign finance complaint as well as initiating a criminal investigation. And I think the Republican Party in this state screwed up big time, and they did all of this to try to win elections, but it's going to backfire, and it already has backfired in a big way.
Let's talk a little bit about the court ruling that happened. I mean, this is clearly the Republican path right now on the national level and in statewide, is to stop any ballots from being counted, including active duty military, greatest generation, anything that comes after Election Day. They're separating them out. We've already seen the Supreme Court rule that some votes will not be counted. They won't matter after this. This is, it's incredibly sad to see a major political party in this country actively trying their hardest to get a ton of votes thrown out.
Well, let me just first start by saying that I think it's important for all of your listeners and everyone else in this state to realize that if you have not cast your ballot via mail yet and you are planning on it, please do not mail in your ballot. The best thing you can do at this point is to vote in person at one of the early vote locations or to actually show up on Election Day at your polling place and vote. Obviously it's shameful. We pride ourselves in Minnesota for not only having high voter participation, highly engaged electorate, but we pride ourselves on civic participation, and that pride has been shared not only by the DFL but by Republicans. And over the years, we've done everything we can to encourage people to participate in this process, in their democracy, to turn out and vote. And here you have now this modern Republican Party led by Jennifer Carnahan and others taking glee and celebrating the fact that thousands of Minnesotans now are going to be disenfranchised and not be able to vote. And I think it's going to, we know it's already backfiring on them. First off, a ton of voters that would probably support Republicans, frankly, are going to be disenfranchised here. Think about this. 82% of military members who are serving overseas vote via mail. So all of those Minnesotans overseas right now who decided to cast their ballot yesterday via mail are not going to have their vote counted now. Seniors, many seniors who don't want to risk their own health by going and voting in person are now going to be disenfranchised if they didn't already cast their ballot. Think about people who live in greater Minnesota, and particularly in mail ballot only precincts. If they haven't already put their mail their vote in the mail, their vote is likely to not count. And these are all people that tend to support Republicans. And the reality is this is not a partisan issue. This is about our democracy. Democracy works best when more people participate. And the fact that you have a major party in this state, the Republican Party, taking glee in the fact that we're going to disenfranchise thousands of Minnesotans is shameful. It's shameful. It's wrong. And, they own it, because it's the DFL party that's actually trying to expand the right to vote, make sure that every eligible legal voter that wants to cast their ballot can do that and that their ballot counts. So, look, we're just trying to inform everyone at this point. If you have not mailed your ballot in, do not at this point go in and vote in person early or on Election Day.
And I will say, as a veteran myself, when we mailed ballots overseas, you're mailing them worldwide. Sometimes the Postal Service works quick. Sometimes it doesn't. There are, a lot of people are going to have being disenfranchised by the Republican Party. But once again, active duty military are going to have Republicans throw their ballots in the trash can because they just don't. They're so afraid of losing, and they're trying desperately to move the goalposts at this point. That for me, as a veteran, I am just wildly angry at the Republican Party for even trying that.
Well, the Republican Party talks all the time about the military and being patriots, right? And there is nothing more fundamental in this country than our right to vote. And it's now you have the Republican Party not even denying the fact that they brought this lawsuit to essentially take people out of the voting pool and trample on our most fundamental right, which is the right to vote. I am so disappointed on a number of levels. And not because, at the end of the day, this benefits Democrats, because there's already been 1.5 million early votes. By our own analysis, based on our modeling and data, 65% of those are Democrats. This ruling is not going to affect the DFL or the Democratic Party. As you said, it's likely that the Republicans were headed for a sure loss in this election. But what's sad to me is, as a citizen of this state and of this country and someone who cares deeply about our democracy, this is the ruling is sad for our democracy. It's really trampling on the rights of all Americans, and I just really think it's terrible.
Ken Martin, kind enough to join us, head of the DFL here in the state of Minnesota. Ken, of course, the next thing here is Election Day. The part two of the Republican plan is an attempt, what seems to be an attempt at voter intimidation by sending poll watchers in, specifically into Minneapolis, to try to deter people. We need to approach this from two ways. One, the disgust of having the poll watchers, but at the other side, if any Democrat feels as if this election is already won, they're a fool. Anyone who hasn't voted needs to vote in person on Election Day, because, like you said, the Republicans are here to show up. This is the reason why they're sending in poll watchers, trying to vote or intimidate. The Republicans want to stifle voting in Democratic areas.
Well, look, they're going to pull out every stop they can to try to intimidate voters in the next 4 days, to try to, change the direction of this election, because they know that they're losing right now. And so the only thing that we can do to respond is to actually show up and vote. That's the way we win. That is our greatest power here. And, as I've said to you many times before, if polls were 100% accurate, we'd be having a different conversation right now about Hillary Clinton's reelection. The reality is that polls are a snapshot in time. We have to if we want change in this country and we want to elect Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Tina Smith, and other Democrats up and down the ballot, we have to be willing to work for it these next 4 days. We can't rest on our laurels. We can't ride the polar coaster and think that we're ahead. We have to run like we're 20 points behind, even if we are 20 points ahead. And if we run strong through the finish line, Matt, I believe that there's nothing the Republicans can throw at us at this point that would allow them to win. But if we start to get complacent and we think we're going to win this, we will certainly allow them an opening to actually steal this election. So get out there and work. Don't take anything for granted. Work for your dreams. Work for your hopes. Work for the change that we desperately need in this country. And let's run as strong as we can all the way through 8 p.m. on election night.
Absolutely. And a DFL up and down the ballot. Let's get that Senate back. Let's get a bigger extension in the House. Then we can actually get some things done in the state to make Minnesota better. Ken Martin, the head of the DFL. Ken, I really appreciate it. I know you're very busy. Thanks for all the visits, and we'll hopefully talk next week maybe with some good news, okay?
That sounds great. Thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate all you do.
My pleasure. Ken Martin, the head of the DFL here in the state of Minnesota. Let's take a break. Come on back. It is the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.